If you watched the last autocross videos, then you know that we had some issues with the brand new engine. So we are going to diagnose that today. Hopefully not end up putting in the old engine back in. And then we are going to take a look at the SLA suspension and make sure that everything is still tip-top there after its first event. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another video. Yeah, if you missed the autocross video, which I'll have a link for it up here, we had some issues with the engine, which then caused me to have to do some parking lot repairs and oil flush in the parking lot of the hotel. What best that we can figure out is there was something going on with one of the injectors, which was just dumping a whole lot of fuel, which would make the car really hard to start, smoking really bad, smelling really bad, and then did get some fuel into the oil. So we are going to check the engine over and hope that we didn't wash down any cylinders, and then also try to figure out what happened to which injector. I have an idea of which one it was based off of working in the hotel parking lot, and we ended up for the second day of the event only running on 7 cylinders for most of it with the one unplugged, and it seemed to run good. So that's kind of got me narrowed down, I think, to cylinder number 3. That was the one that had the wet plug when I pulled them all out. So we will pull all the spark plugs back out again today, check them over. We will take a Borescope and look inside the engine and try to see to make sure that we didn't wash down any of the cylinders, make sure that they all look good. This engine has basically no miles on it. I got it running right before the event and took it for, maybe 10 miles of a drive, and then took it to autocross. So it has, maybe less than 20 miles on it. So hopefully it is good. And then I'll do a compression check to make sure that everything is good there, if the cylinders look good, and then try to figure out the injector stuff. I did borrow a Noid Light from a coworker. It's just a light that you plug into the injector harness and it will light up when it's firing. So if the ECU is possibly bad or something is shorted or something, that should either light up solid or not light up at all. If it lights up and is pulsing, then everything seems like it would be good with the engine and with the wiring. In the parking lot, I did do like some continuity checks in the harness, and I had power. Nothing was shorted to ground. I didn't really check connection from each injector to the ECU, but I verified that it wasn't grounded out and that I had power to each of the injectors. So with that, let's start pulling these spark plugs and getting some checks done. We got the injectors all pulled out. They're not looking too great, too bad. Some of them, look decent. This bank is definitely a little blacker, I believe. And then this one, number 3, is wet, but I had put oil in there back at the start of the event. So it just might be oil still on there. Doesn't really smell like fuel on it, but that is definitely the injector that was wet when I pulled it at the track and is my culprit. Like I said, I pretty much ran it with that injector unplugged. I did put a little bit of oil in that cylinder to help it just be okay, hopefully, if there was a washdown event. But nothing else is looking wet. So number 3 is definitely where I am going to spend my time, but I am going to go and Borescope every cylinder just to make sure. All right, so this is the Borescope. It is just a camera on a long line that you can put into the cylinders. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a great picture, but it does allow you to have a little bit of insight into there. It does have a light onto it. It's just, I can't really get it to turn around to look at all the walls, which kind of sucks, but from what I can see, I can still see cross hatching on the one portion of the cylinder wall that I can see. I can kind of move it around a little bit and see some other things. But I can see some cross hatching still on 3. I've looked at all the cylinders and they all look the same, have a little bit of you still see the cross hatching on there. So I don't think there was any kind of severe washdown event. But either way, I will do a compression check on this. I borrowed a leak down tester if I want to do that on the engine, just to cover all bases that I can. But yep, let's move on to the compression test. All right, to make it a little bit easier for doing the compression check, I rigged up this just little push button, and we'll attach it to the battery, and then I disconnected the starter wire and put it into there. I had kind of wanted to put in like a little push button somewhere in here just to make it easy for doing this kind of stuff, but this might work out pretty well. So I can just crank the engine over without having power on, which is nice. Then I don't have any fuel pressure, so I'm not going to be accidentally firing any of the ejectors and just putting fuel into the engine. We also have the ignition unplugged just in case. It shouldn't fire anyways, even though because the power is off. So we can just crank the engine over, which is pretty sweet from here. And yeah, we have 160 PSI on that cylinder, which is plenty. That is within spec. I've actually gone through and done all the other cylinders, and they're all showing about 160, 170 PSI. So that is good there. I guess I will do, I don't know if I'm going to do the leak down since the cylinder looks good. Compression check has come back good. I'm pretty confident everything is a-okay in the engine. Like I said, it's got less than 20 miles on it at this point. So I think I'm going to plug in the Noid Light and we will kind of see how that works out. Never used one of those before. All right, so this is the Noid Light lights, I guess, plural one. There's different ones in here for different injectors. This one is a little old, so it has like a Ford TBI and some other things, but I think this might be the one that we need. So this will just kind of plug into the fuel injector and it should light up when it's firing. I'm going to go ahead and unplug all the other injectors just so they're not actually squirting any fuel into the cylinders. And that way we could maybe go ahead and test all the plugs just to be doubly safe that everything is working correctly. One of the nice things about having a 1-inch spacer on the intake is I can reach pretty much all the fuel injector plugs, which is nice. Turn on power, but we can then still crank it over from up here since it doesn't need, I don't need to be inside to crank it over. And we can see if we're getting the light to light up. Yeah, it's lighting up. I don't know if you can really see that. Let's try it again. Yeah, so it's lighting up. So that's hopefully telling me that the ECU and wiring and all that is actually good, which I was a little worried about that. I didn't want the ECU to have gotten fried or something like that. All right, that one is firing too. So yep, I'll just go through all these injectors and check them. If this all turns out to be good, then we are going to be probably pull this intake off, pull all the injectors out, and we will send them back to the person that cleaned them. Because these were just serviced right before building this engine back in December. So they have been sitting for, you know, 3 or so months before being fired up, or there could be something in the fuel system that kind of got trash in there and got it stuck again or clogged or something of that nature. But yeah, we will do that. He's already reached out to me about getting them in to get them just checked over to verify that everything is still good with them. So that's pretty nice. So we have done a Borescope on all the cylinders. Those are good. Compression check on all the cylinders. Those are good. A Noid Light on all the injectors. Those are good. So at this point, pretty confident that the bottom end of the engine is okay. We are going to now pull the intake off, pull all the injectors out, and we'll get them serviced again. And hopefully maybe they find something. All right, now it's time to check over the suspension, and I did find a major issue on each side. The issues are separate to each side, but there is a major problem that I found. So this is the driver's side. You can see the torque paint that I mentioned in a previous episode. So that was very useful for checking that nothing has loosened up. I can just quickly look down at things and know that the torque is still there, which is really nice. One thing that I did not maybe either properly torque, or I definitely didn't put the torque paint on, were the bolts for the caliper bracket, the anchor bolts, and these were loose on this side, almost ready to fall out on the top one, and the bottom one was pretty loose. So that was a major issue that either possibly wasn't getting the proper braking on this side, or there was noise or something that could have been going on that. So it's a good thing to check it over, and we caught that before the next event. So that was the major issue on this side. Otherwise, everything is nice and tight on this side of the car. No major issues. I do have, I think this one is just a little bit loose, but it can't actually unscrew from the whole car if one side is tight and just one side's loose. So that's okay, but I will get that tightened up and probably maybe put a piece of torque stripe on there so I can easily look at that and tell when it is loose or tight. So that is the driver's side. All right, so this is the passenger side. As you can see, I got the torque paint up on this side also, and everything is a-okay on this side. The brake is actually good. I torqued this one, but I do need to put some torque stripe on it. The major issue on this side of the car is this upper ball joint. So you see that play right there. So I'll need to take this apart and properly set the backlash, or whatever they call that for the ball joints. So that needs to be done on this side, where the other side is nice and tight on there. But not too bad of a major issue, but if that went on anymore, that would definitely wear out that ball joint and possibly could even break it, which would be bad news. So we'll get that set up, and everything else looks good. I've checked all over all the welds on everything. I've checked all the bolts. I don't see any issues at the moment going on. So one thing that we can take a look at is the tire wear. So this is the tire that was on the car. Obviously I had a lot of rollover going on to the outside, even though I was running like 3 or more degrees of camber with the strut setup, and we had pretty much nothing going on the inside. This is the new tire with the new suspension with just two events on it. So we're getting not that much rollover on the inside still, but still a little bit coming over there. And then on the outside, we got basically the same amount of rollover as the inside. So that is really good. We're not quite at the lines, but we are not at least wearing them out as we did on the other tires with the strut suspension. So tire wear is really good. I was measuring the tire temperatures at the event, and the inside was showing a lot hotter than the outside, but this is pretty worn right here. I was running about, this side was actually a little high. It was at like -3, where the other side was at -2 degrees of camber. So I'm getting them more evened out. I didn't have the time to really mess with that, and I found an issue with my caster camber gauge, which I can go over in a second. But maybe the toe, the little bit of toe out that I have, I need to double check the toe and make sure, because I did adjust the ride height a little bit at the event because I was rubbing on the fenders. So I did adjust the ride height a little bit. So I'll need to maybe recheck my toe, make sure that that is all still kind of where I wanted to be, but maybe that's what this is. I'm not too sure at the moment, but tire pressures I think got pretty decent. I had a good even temperature going from like the outside to inside. It was then getting hot once I was on the inside. So that was kind of telling me that I had too much camber, I think. But we will do a little bit more events and some tuning and testing and try to get that all figured out. Now for my caster camber gauge. So I found that I had a lot of play going on, and it wasn't actually giving me accurate measurements, because it was showing that I was like less than 2 degrees, and I was looking at the wheel and it's like, there's no way that is only sitting at less than -2 degrees. It looked a lot more. And then I put the angle finder on there, and it was showing I was at like 3 degrees of negative. So then it led me looking at this, and I found that the screw in there was just a little bit loose. I thought it was supposed to be allowing for this thing to spin, which I have it tight enough to where it doesn't spin now, but it was giving it enough to where it was also kind of rocking back and forth. So I got that all tightened up. I got this guy tightened up. There was a little bit of play going on right in here, but that is all showing perfect now, and I can actually dial in my caster and camber, mainly the camber, correctly. I didn't realize that there was that much play going on in there, which is not good, but at least got it figured out, and we have nice accurate results now. Okay, so I got the fuel injectors back from getting checked and clean. No issues were found, as I expected. Put them back in, got the car started up. I put the Noid Light on injector 3. I did move injector 3 and 4, the physical injector, just so if there is an issue, I can try to trace it out to either the injector or the harness, if it follows or stays. But I put the Noid Light on cylinder 3, and there were a few issues with the car actually running. During starting, it looked fine as I checked earlier, but once running, the Noid Light was erratic. It wasn't following, and I put it onto another one, and it looked normal, as you would think, just kind of pulsing with at a steady rate. But on cylinder 3, it was pretty erratic. So I kind of trace it out to, I think it's the traction control unit. I don't really like the connectors that are on that unit. I was planning to change them, and I just kind of forgot to do that in the off season, to look them up and try to figure out what connectors they actually are. So I do need to do that, and maybe that will help it. For right now, we're just going to bypass the traction control unit because we have another autocross coming up this weekend. We are back to back on these autocrosses right here at the beginning of the season. So we're just going to run without the traction control, launch control for this weekend. which is okay. It's really nice having that traction, or the launch control unit. The traction control, we don't really use all that much. The weather's looking good this weekend, so it's not a rain event, but the launch control is really fun to use and really helps get dialed in launches. So we'll just have to do it off of our foot, and it's fine how that is. But otherwise, I think everything is good. Suspension, I got that all figured out, and that is good. I double checked camber and my toe. Everything is looking really good. So I'm like 16th of a toe out, I believe it was, which is where I kind of wanted to be, 16 to an eighth. And then camber is around -2.5 on both sides now. I had a little too much on the driver's side due to that the mount being a little bit loose, but got that all dialed in to where they're the same on both sides now. So we are heading off to another autocross, so stay tuned.